Hi guys. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about the Spotify controversy that's been happening more recently with the raising of the stream count in order to get paid for lower streamed artists. Now, this is a topic that's very interesting to me as I also make music, and I would like to kind of dissect that in terms of what it means for smaller artists, bigger artists, and just in general the entire concept of commerce tied to music. I'm of the opinion that art and music can't really put a price tag on it. But unfortunately, in this culture that we have to survive using money. Something like this, which, if you look at historically what Spotify has done, and before them the record labels, but let's stick to Spotify for now. They've essentially given these artists, lower artists, much less legroom to play with and much less incentive by creating something like the 0.003 per stream cents per stream payout. So off the get-go, Spotify, and I would pigeonhole all the corporations in this, but let's stick to Spotify. Spotify has had a giant market share, giant profits, and of course the record labels have seemingly conglomerated with them. And that seems to me like a system that's transitioned from the sort of dinosaur record label system into the streaming world as the streaming world gained notoriety and popularity. And it's the same old story of, kicking the little guy while he's down. And I see that as well with just the entire structure of it. I mean, let's look at it as what a general starting artist would need to do in order to make money using Spotify. Now, you have to pay to a distributor. That would be DistroKid usually, because it's the cheapest. And then if you want to get on the editorial playlist or the radar, which is actually helping you just allow your songs and new releases to be heard by your own fans, you have to pay extra for that. Then you got the issue of how do you get that music out there? Then you have to pay for advertising. Now, this is already stacking up as far as what an artist would need to do financially. Then, on top of all that, they've added this, which is just another blow to these up-and-coming artists, putting them in a position of having to scramble to meet these needs. Now, sure, it doesn't sound like much, 1,000 streams, okay, you should be getting 1,000 streams, let's say. That's the, consensus. But you got to look at it like if you have a ton of songs, even big artists, if you have a ton of songs, let's say hundreds of songs, right? And you have a lot of obscure songs. You have your hits, but you have a lot of obscure songs. Those obscure songs are not going to be reaching that mark, especially for lower tier artists. But they might be reaching a certain mark that's close to it. And now all those songs that are reaching that potentially 1,000 stream mark but not crossing it are not going to get, the artist is not going to get the funding for. So just the entire structure seems to me, I know it's a business, but it seems to me like it's calculated towards, we just really want the artists that are generating giant revenue, which is, through a business standpoint, I understand, but through a cultural music standpoint, I don't, because all these big artists now were smaller artists at one point, and all the future artists and current artists that are trying to be big, you're disincentivizing. So you won't have another generation of big artists. It'll be very small, select few, most likely people that are born into wealth, things like that, because people on average, especially within this economy, are not going to be able to finance their music. And along with that, I think even as a business, even though they are trying to make giant profit and all that, I think there has to be a point where the greed ends, right? Like where it's just too much. And I would lump all these different services within that. I think Spotify is the worst one. I would lump all corporations within that, but I know and I understand that's the nature of capitalism, but it's still, I think, getting to a point where it's a little bit ridiculous. To kind of put it in perspective, I mean, let's say you're a talented young or starting out artist, and even if you do have some money, you cannot compete with these giant corporations giant record labels, giant bands, giant machines, billion-dollar earning machines at this point. So what do? All you can do if you're passionate about your art is to slowly, release music or be consistent. Try not to give up, but I mean, I think that the playing field is just so unleveled these days that it's a little bit ridiculous. And I understand that back in the day, let's say the 80s, 70s, 60s, artists had to grind and they had to, graft. They had to put in their labor and go out there and do shows. But even still, the climate back then was a little bit more, if you had talent of any degree, you could reach a certain spot, right? Whereas nowadays, I feel it's more, personally speaking, as someone that's seen a lot of live music lately over the last few years, I see a lot of talent. Like, I would say, like, top tier talent out there that's just not getting heard. And if we continue to support this and continue to support these corporations, unfortunately, that's where it's going to get worse and worse. And we're going to be cutting out a giant generation out of music making. So that's all I think I have to say on that for now. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you.